Today on Eagles Don't Quack, we're sitting down with Susan Johnson, daughter, wife, mom, founder of the Kick Cancer Movement, and a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, helping families thrive through cancer, not just survive it. This is for anyone touched by cancer who needs hope, real-world strategies, and courage to lead their health. Let's chop it up. Susan Johnson, how you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Thank you for being here. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here with us, and for that, we are grateful.
Well, thank you. It's an honor.
Tell us a little bit about Susan Johnson. Who is Susan Johnson?
Well, I am born and raised in California, believe it or not. Still like the state. There's some things about it I would change. In fact, funny thing about that, we lived in Mexico for 2 years, and just recently, we just came back to California about a year ago, and everybody was like, "You're what? You're going where?"
Where?
But we live now in sunny San Diego, California. We own a private practice here in Solana Beach. We're actually about 100 steps to the beach, which is a super bonus. And I'm a wife to I call him my hot husband. We've been married for almost 22 years.
I'm sure he's going to be happy to hear that.
Yeah, he gets to hear it all the time. And then 2 teenagers. I have my daughter, Selah. She's going to be 17 soon. And then my son, Kicker, just turned 15.
Well, you have adults in the house.
It's crazy. It's actually wild. My daughter just took her permit test, and I got a little terrified. Like, wait, now we're stepping into that?
They grow up so fast. When I first got diagnosed with cancer in 2021, it was kind of at the height of COVID. And my son was just entering ninth or 10th grade. And so they had remote learning here in North Carolina. And so fighting for my life, I just started asking God for these little small wins. Like, let me see him graduate high school. Let me see him graduate college. And the next thing you know, boom, he was graduating high school. And now he goes to NC State University, which is I went there as well. And he's graduating in May in 2.5 years.
Wow. I love it.
In agricultural engineering. And I'm going to get to see him graduate twice because he's double majoring. And so,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I'm being rewarded by seeing these things. So I know exactly what you mean when you say the time gets away from you. They grow up so fast.
Well, it's funny when you say that too about like the little prayers that you're hoping God will answer when you're fighting something like cancer.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, like, I would never wish cancer on my worst enemy, but I wish that every single person had the perspective of fragility of life, right? Because then you celebrate things so much more. Everything means more. And so that perspective really is a gift.
I spoke at ASCO conference.
Okay.
And I was telling them that when you grow up and you use these cliches, like if someone asks you how you doing and you say, well, I'm doing fine, one day at a time, these things we throw out there. But when you hear the word cancer and you literally are living one day at a time, it kind of comes full circle. It means a little bit more, and it's a different meaning. And so because you never was promised this time that you think you always had. I never knew. I'm an engineer by trade and I had my own firm, and I had like 200 employees and all this stuff. But I wasn't thinking when I was working so hard in my early 30s that at 49 at the time, I would be facing this because I thought I had time. I took no vacations and I worked and I did all these things, and then cancer redirected me. So we don't have that time.
Time is the one currency we can't make grow or trade in or Yeah,
one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible, it says, for what is your life? It's a thin vapor that appeareth and then vanishes away.
Yeah.
So I love everything that you're doing, the work that you're doing, your faith and that connection with God, our creator. How does that strengthen you? When you heard the words cancer for the first time in your family, what happened? What activated?
I mean, if I'm really honest, I was mad. I had righteous anger with God. My baby has cancer and, why us? Why me? Why are we going through this? What is the purpose in this? This is so unfair. And I became a victim for a short period of time. And I remember one of my best friends, she's to this day my best friend. Her name's Diana, and she came into the hospital and she gave me this bracelet that said, God's got this. And I put it on, just kind of nonchalant. And she said, Susan, you've got to stop praying for God to take this away. You need to pray to ask him to reveal to you what he's going to do with this.
That's right.
And I was kind of like, oh, but I want to be mad and so she really helped me kind of snap out of it and go, okay, you know what? Like, this is our reality right now. So God, what are you going to do with this? And how can you use us in this process? And so we kind of just, were plummeted into this standard of care, conventional treatment. And my child, who at this point had never had a medication, a vaccine, like the kid was, we joke he went from breast milk to bone broth. He was 3 when he was diagnosed with leukemia. And now we're like, he's getting pumped full of all these medications, bright red chemotherapy and chemo in his spine and his mouth, like all of these things. And, you feel like, which I know you felt, you all of a sudden have lost control of something that you really felt like you had control over.
That's right.
And so what's the option at that point? It's like, okay, Lord, you created this child. You entrusted him with me. All I can do is surrender his life, surrender this healing journey back to you because I am at a loss. Like, I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of our, the first 20 days or so were inpatient. And that's when we were really blessed to have some good friends and colleagues of mine. So at the time, I was already a private functional nutritional therapy practitioner. I had a private practice. I wouldn't touch cancer with a 10-foot pole. That was scary. Like, if you have cancer, I don't work with you. If you want weight loss, hormone support, digestive help, happy to work with you, right?
Good girl. Yeah.
And now, I'm walking through cancer with my son. And so I already had this experience as a functional practitioner. I understood nutrition, all of these things. But now, again, it still felt like this was all so foreign. And so we had some of our colleagues come alongside of us that do understand cancer from a functional perspective. And so while my son's going through standard of care, chemotherapy, all the surgeries, they're teaching us all the things we could do to support him. And I will say that gave me my power back. Like, just being able, I always tell people, especially during COVID, we talked a lot about replace fear with action.
That's right.
Like, you could sit home and wear a mask in your house and cross your arms and sanitize everything and just be afraid. Or you could go, you know what? I'm going to take opportunity right now to take action and do something that could better my health, my son's health, our mental health. And so we did. We just jumped right into supporting his body naturally while it went through all this necessary, but aggressive treatment. We now, fast forward, he went through chemo for 3.5 years. He had chemo every day by mouth for 3.5 years. And he's 15. He finished treatment when he was 7. And man, I've seen what God did with it. Like, he's now, we kind of joke that we went from having one child with cancer to thousands around the world.
And it boosts your faith.
Yeah. And, and it's still hard. Like, I don't get jaded. Actually, I was just at a naturopathic oncology conference this weekend. And, I'm surrounded by all these brilliant doctors. I always say, like, I was probably the dumbest person in the room. But I'm just sitting there, we're learning research, and then there's doctors that are sharing patient stories. And half the time I'm just in tears and I'm looking around the room and I'm like, are all these people jaded? Like, and I do pray that God would never allow my heart to harden, right? Because just everything, you can get jaded to things so easily, especially every day when you're talking to moms that their child's been diagnosed with cancer. And man, my heart breaks every time. And I'm okay with that.
It becomes a routine sometimes. Like, I'm on the board at Duke University Medical Center, and we just had a meeting. We was talking about this particular thing, that you can't get to the point that you're so insensitive that you disconnect. Because when that patient is hearing the word they have cancer, that is something they can never unhear. And then secondly, they're reading your emotions, because at that point in time, there's nobody there but you and them. And if they see doubt or if they see disbelief, they see all of that through your reactions. And if that's the first thing that they are leaving from that room with, then God help them, because now it's negativity surrounding them because you're the first one that gave it to them. You introduced that to them. You know, I
So
remember
true.
my doctor was so kind. I consider them families. You know, a little bit of my backstory. I went to UNC Medical Center for my cancer treatment. But lo and behold, back in 1998, my engineering company, I built that wing of the hospital. Now, who would have
Whoa.
thought all these years later, I would walk through those doors of the building that I built? Ain't that something? And that was a
Wow.
sign to me to say, hey, you need to be here. And so I get through the doors season and I look up on the wall and it says Tony Williams Lobby. I really knew I was meant to be there. And so, look, at that point, I said, okay, Lord, I'm following what you're doing, even though this is a tragedy and I'm trying to turn this into a trajectory. I treat them like family and they treat me like family. And so I went through my treatment. This is year 5. My cancer anniversary was January 20th, which is also my birthday,
Wow.
right? And
Oh
so
my gosh.
yeah, this is amazing. And so 5 years into this, I was treated for a rare lymphoma, stage 4. And then this past summer, I had to have this invasive treatment because I've had CAR T, I've had chemo, and none of that worked. How
Oh,
about I was now re-diagnosed having Hodgkin's lymphoma? So I had both at the same time, which is a unicorn. They super rare. So I had a stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma and a stage 4 non-Hodgkin's, and all my treatment was geared for the non-Hodgkin's. We didn't even know the Hodgkin's was tucked up under there hiding and camouflaging. And so
wow.
imagine if I didn't have this belief in my team and this faith in my team, how that would impact me psychologically. But because I went through that and they told me 1 to 3 years and I'm still living in year 5 and now finding out there was a second cancer, I just look at it as if they just changed partners. It's a heavyweight
Yeah.
fight. I knocked the other one out and then they switched up on me. And so you have to have this kind of faith for us to continue on. It's okay to ask God why. Here you are, a mom. You birth this child, this thing that you love, and then boom, cancer. How dare you? Right?
Yeah,
How dare
absolutely.
you? I serve you, you know? So I can imagine the feelings that you have.
Well, and I think, it's interesting that you said about having faith in your team as well. I really struggled with that in the beginning, and I've learned a lot since. And so I educate my families in a different way. But in the beginning, mind you, there was definitely ego because I'm coming from this functional natural health background.
Mm-hmm.
I was very like, we don't use medicine. Why would we use medicine? And now all of a sudden I'm thrown into this standard of care.
Yeah.
And I remember it was about 6 months where I was so angry at our team. I didn't like our oncologist because I didn't like what he was forcing me to do with my son. I didn't like I didn't like anything about it. And finally, our osteopath, who's one of the natural members of our team, who was supporting Kicker alongside the conventional team, he goes, Season, you have to trust them and have faith in them for what they know how to do, which is chemotherapy, surgery, radiation if necessary. You
Mm-hmm.
need to appreciate and trust them for what they can do. And then outside of that, you don't have to. But that is a big part of Kicker's healing, like you said, is for him to see that I trust and I believe in this treatment plan, even though it was really hard to wrap my brain around. He needed to see that. Even as a child, they pick up on our energy. And then for him, and I see this for a lot of my clients, even my adult clients now with cancer, is sometimes I'm the one that has to hold hope for them because it's hard for them to hold that hope. They've received this horrible diagnosis. And so whether it's, a part of your care team, your doctor, your functional practitioner, like we have to sometimes be the one that holds that hope. And you're right. So we can't waver in that. And I mean, I don't know how people do this from a professional standpoint without trusting in the Lord. Like, I mean, before
Impossible.
I meet with a client, I'm on my knees like, Lord, I am not smart enough or capable enough to heal this person. That's not what you've called me to do, is be the healer. You're the healer. I just need you to, like, it's all on you. You just
I love it. I
let me
love it.
do this.
Acknowledge him in all thy ways, and he shall what? Direct your path.
Direct your
Look at your
path.
name, Season Johnson, right? Think about that name, Season, for such a time as this, right? Even
Yeah.
then, your name was prophetic, right?
Mm.
Season for this season. I think you got to hold space for these people, right? And in the
Yeah.
African American community, Black and brown indigenous people, with all the mistrust in the medical system and historically with Henrietta Lacks and Tuskegee, I feel like I have to carry a lot of space sometimes when I'm speaking, because before I can educate them, I have to break down the misconceptions and all the
Mm.
barriers that come with that, because they say, well, they're going to treat me like a guinea pig, or they don't understand clinical trials fully, or they don't understand the holistic approach. I stopped taking my medicine 3 years ago, right? So when I went to college, I double majored in pre-med and engineering. I was going to go to medical school. And so when I was sitting there 2 years into this, I told my doctor, we had a conversation. I said, I understand all what we're doing. I understand the science behind it, all of this. I said, but it doesn't quite seem like you guys are trying to heal the blood. This is what the issue is in the blood. And we're doing everything except that. We're killing cells and doing all this. So I stopped taking my medicine, Season, and I came home and set up a lab in my house. And I start researching all herbal medicines, roots, concoctions, and I start making my own blends of stuff: burdock root, wormwood, ashwagandha, cleaver's herb, red clover. What you know about all this?
Yeah.
And I stopped taking all my stuff and was making my own tablets and my teas and the soursop. My best friend in college lives in Florida. He would UPS me. He has soursop trees in his yard. He would UPS me a box full of leaves like every month. And I would dehydrate them and
My.
make my own soursop powder, right? And so the funny thing is, my doctor is so inquisitive. I mean, she went to MIT, super smart, teaches at the university, but she never thought to look at my charts and to see that I wasn't getting refills. She never even asked. And then one day she said, shouldn't you have this? I said, you know what? I stopped taking that years ago. And she was like, what? Because my blood was good and I was trying to heal myself from all those impurities and detoxing my blood and giving my cells fresh life, And do you not know? She said, you know what? Just keep doing what you're doing. And even though I'm diagnosed with the second cancer, I'm not taking any treatments. I'm not doing anything. I'm just continuing doing what I'm doing. So you got to have
Wow.
that faith to believe that, right? You
You
can't
do.
just talk it. You got to walk it, because that
And
little bit of doubt.
it's like building, I always tell people this is your Super Bowl.
Yeah, it
Like
is.
you've got to go all in. You are training, you are preparing, you are creating your perfect team of support, and like you go all in. And that's
All in.
is so important. And I don't know if you know this, but with pediatric cancer, you are required to go through standard of care. So as parents, if our child's under 18, we can't opt out of chemo, radiation, and surgery.
That's right.
So we're required to do that. And it's funny you said that about not filling meds, because, they are watching the parents. They're making sure you're filling every single possible med. But I will tell you, this is one thing that we didn't fill. And I believe, it's my prayer is that this becomes an archaic practice in childhood cancer treatment, is the use of prophylactic antibiotics. So they're giving kids, especially with the leukemias and lymphomas, they're giving them prophylactic antibiotics for the duration of treatment. So my son should have been on antibiotics every week for 3.5 years.
That's right.
Well, we know that your immune system God designed us with an incredible innate sense of intelligence and ability to really heal with the things he's provided. And sometimes that means man's inventions with the gift that he's given them with brains to create chemotherapies and CAR T therapy, right?
That's right.
But
That's right.
also our immune system is supposed to help kick the cancer out of the body as well as the drugs.
That's
And I
right.
just couldn't wrap my brain around, why am I giving him antibiotics to prevent something when his immune system needs to be on fire? And so we decided not to. And, we were fortunately not ever questioned until the end. And I shared with him, we didn't ever give him the antibiotics. And the reason I'm telling you this is you watched my son thrive through treatment. He did so well. He never got opportunistic infection. He never needed a transfusion, never needed platelets. And I want you to see that and know that it is possible to help these kids using what you just said. These parents don't even have to create a lab in their living room. They could go to Whole Foods or Sprouts or go to these grocery stores and get real food to help support their child, right? Different modalities of healing that are natural, that are here on this earth. And
you have to be intentional.
You do. It's like you said, it's Super Bowl. And the other issue that I have, and I think you're probably seeing this, which is why your approach is different. Chemotherapy, and again, please hear me, and everybody listening, I do believe chemotherapy has a role in radiation and surgery. Like, I'm thankful for it, and I do to this day believe that chemotherapy played a part in my son being cured.
Exactly.
However, what we do know now is that chemotherapy, radiation, they get what we call the daughter cells. The cancer, they're kind of classified in oncology talk as the daughter cells. So they are effective in most cancers of killing those off. But what they don't get is the cancer stem cells. In fact, they make the cancer stem cells a little bit more sneaky. They kind of go into hiding and get dormant and can get stronger. So it's like, when you're going
else too.
Come back as something else. It's like weeding your garden, but you're not pulling the weeds out by the roots, right?
That's right.
And so it's like when we bring in nutrition, we bring in these herbs, we bring in all these natural therapies, that actually helps the body root up some of those stem cells that we don't want there anymore. So this is kind of like my biggest thing is teaching families, chemo can't be the only part of this. Your child didn't get cancer, or you didn't get cancer because God made you deficient in chemotherapy.
That's right.
Like, that's not why it happened. So
that's right.
Let's use that, but then let's bring all these other things in to help heal the body and correct the terrain.
It's the educational piece. And I think with knowledge, people can make better informed decisions, and I think that's what's lacking sometimes. It's the food choices. Here it's a lot of food deserts. I live in Raleigh, but it's a lot of rural counties, and people always talk about, when I speak about a food desert and this, and third. I said, well, let's look at it like this. Even if you have a Walmart or Carly C's or Piggly Wiggly, I don't know if y'all have that stuff out there, but kind of lower discount grocery stores. If you go into the store with the intention that you want to eat healthier, you will find yourself kind of steering away from that stuff that not good, right? You can go down the aisle and get frozen vegetables and not get the canned ones, right? You can cut down on the meats and get beans and substitute it with beans and soups and broths. But they don't want to do that. And when you start talking to them about that, it's like, you came from Mars. No, I was on a podcast yesterday. I told them about a story. My grandmama is 90 years old, right? And she still eats fatback. And I tell her, Grandma, you can't eat fatback, right? But it's not just my grandmom, it's the entire community that eats fatback. And then they'll say, well, I've been eating fatback my whole life, right? And so she says, I'm 90, I'm going to keep eating fatback. So these are kind of some of the things that you have to kind of reintroduce to them slowly, like why you shouldn't eat that, or these choices you can make even in a Walmart or a lower discount store. Is just be intentional with what you're eating, because that is what's going to help you.
I totally agree. I always tell people, I don't care what store you're shopping at, Walmart, Piggly Wiggly, whatever it is, just stay on the perimeter. Don't go in the aisles. Stay on the perimeter, and you will find, like you said, I don't care what food desert you're in, you will still find options.
You'll find
less is more. Less is more. You don't have to be creative and concocting all these crazy recipes. Just stick with protein, veggies, fruits, and you're good. And I know kids are inherently picky. I always say it's kind of like negotiating with small terrorists all day long.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're picky, but then also you get them on chemo and their taste buds change. It just makes it even more complex. But gosh, there are so many. I love challenging my parents with, like, okay, tell me, what's their favorite food? Mac and cheese? I got you. I'm going to give you a recipe of how to make that a superfood, and they're going to still eat it. They're going to like it. We're just making it with a few different ingredients. That's all.
That's all.
So we can still enjoy it. I'm a foodie. I love food. So I want to enjoy it. I don't want somebody to take that away from me. So I'm going to get creative and figure out how I can enjoy certain things and make them healthier.
It's just a struggle sometimes, season, when you gotta break down some of these misconceptions to even get the door open to introduce them to a better.
It's so true. And food is the biggest thing because
It
so
is.
many of us have grown up in culture. My mom's from the South. And so food was like that. I mean, it's a huge deal and it's everybody gathers around food. They reward with food. It is a huge deal. And so when our culture emphasizes food as such a social thing and so enjoyable, you start to try to take that away from some people and they think, and yeah, they put their guard up and they're upset about it. And then you're also going against the hospital system, which, like you said, they're bringing in these plates of packaged processed food that have no business being in a hospital. And the doctors aren't educated. I don't know if you know this, but doctors, oncologists don't have to take nutrition. It's an elective. So they go
I
through
didn't
all
know
of
that.
medical school and nutrition is not even a requirement. And so this is why we have this big gap in doctors telling my families all the time, oh, it's just calories. It doesn't matter what they eat. Give them French fries and cake. It's fine. We just don't want them to lose weight. And here I'm like, well, we know that processed food creates inflammation. Cancer loves inflammation. So no, this is not a good idea.
I
I have
remember when I
Tony.
had my first chemo, they was giving me cookies and sodas. Like, do you want a cookie and a soda? No, I don't want that.
That's crazy. And actually, you said something earlier about different ethnicities, and we saw this firsthand. My son was treated at Loma Linda Children's Hospital, which is in Southern California, kind of the Redlands, Riverside area. And our
Mm-hmm.
roommate, sweet Luis, I think about him often and I pray he's still alive and doing well. It was from a Hispanic family, a low-income Hispanic family. And I was watching the way that when his dad would come in, English was a second language. It was just very different. The way they were communicating with him and giving him such bare minimum information versus the way they were communicating with us. And at one point, I'm sitting, giving Kicker, putting his little supplement concoctions together. And he walks over to me in broken English and he has this vitamin catalog. He's like, tell me what to get for him. They don't tell me anything. I don't know what I can give him. And Luis was given, he was 7. They were giving him, what's that horrible soda, Mountain Dew, to take his
Yeah.
chemo pills with. And this dad was like desperate to learn, but wasn't being given any of this information, you know?
Yeah.
And so the disconnect with nutrition and hospitals it's outrageous, honestly. It's a crime against humanity.
Well, they're almost trying to serve two masters. You know, I spoke at a conference in Orlando and I told them, I said, I understand when you chose to go to medical school, you had good intentions. If you choose to be a researcher, you have good intentions. But once you get into that system, a system that you can't change, you start conforming. And now I shouldn't turn into, it'll be all right, kind of thing. I
Yeah.
said, so you always got to remember your why, but not only remember your why, you have to take a stance on some things ethically, just saying, I can't do that. That's not good for the patient because when the
Yeah.
financial part come in, it kind of blurs the line. So a hospital, like even the boards that I serve on at UNC and Duke, these boards are for community outreach. We help set policy. We look at protocols and all these different things. But then you got another side of the hospital that cares nothing about it. So it's
Yeah.
almost like you're trying to serve two masters, and which one is going to win? Which one is
Yeah.
going to have the most influence? Because again, people sense all of that. If we're in the community, you and I working, and we're telling people about nutrition and telling our stories and how they can improve their quality of life, but then they get to the facility and it's something different, then that affects the work that we do.
It 100% does. So this is something that I learned early on and I communicate to my families is what I shared in the beginning about how angry that I was with our oncology team and I couldn't accept it. And I finally realized I had to surrender to that and trust them for what they knew to do. So what I tell my families is when you're working with me, right? And you're, whether it's me or somebody else, where you're getting functional support while your child is going through standard of care, it's a trust game. You have to choose to trust me and you have to choose to trust them because here's what they're up against. I write a protocol out and nothing I ever recommend is contraindicated with treatment. I don't want to contraindicate that. I want to only improve the efficacy while protecting the body, right? And keeping these kids as healthy as possible. But I put a protocol together. They go show their doctor or the pharmacist and they're like, nope, none of it's safe. So because like you alluded to, this isn't their world. They don't understand it. They learned what they learned in medical school, which is funded by big pharma. Nothing has to do with nutrition. But what I tell my families is you have to understand where they're coming from. There's two pieces to this. We all by nature have ego. And unfortunately, it's like naturally we lead with it, right? When you're questioned or when somebody's confronting you about something, that first response is to put up that wall of ego. And I say, so that's the first thing. And then the second thing is you're questioning something they just spent how many hundreds of thousands of dollars and how many years studying. And for you to bring something to them that questions everything they know, that would make them have to question everything they've been taught and to go,
Well
well, if this
said.
is true, why didn't I learn this? Right.
Well said. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
tricky.
You find that a lot in the rural communities, like with the primary care physicians, because they're the ones I see a lot of ego from when you're coming in and you're having these conferences and these lunch and learns. It's almost like you're telling them they're not good enough. Here's these people and patients they've been treating 20, sometimes 30 years, doing the best they can. But we know the data says a lot of misdiagnoses come out of these situations because of that ego and because you might have thought somebody had carpal tunnel, but it was multiple myeloma, but you treated them with carpal tunnel because in your mind, hey, that's just this. But it was cancer the entire time and you never told them to get a second opinion. That ego comes in and it's almost like you become tribal. These
Yeah.
are my people. I'm
Yeah.
looking over them. They're coming to me. But that's not sometimes in their best interest.
No, and again, you're right. It's like every day choosing to surrender ego and our personal motives, which we might be able to justify they're right. I want to help this person. But you have to surrender that. Like there is a time and a place where you have to seek out alternatives, options, or advice. And you know what, kids, I can't tell you how many of my families have shared that story of being misdiagnosed over and over and over, despite the fact the mom is begging the doctor, please run labs, please do this. And months later, they finally do because the child is so sick and they're like, oops, we missed this cancer.
Yeah, you're right.
So that is
tells
a
a
big
story.
thing is advocating.
Advocating is huge and you need someone to do that for you. You know, I'll pivot back to my cousin. She's a educated woman and has all these things going for her. Now she's battling leukemia. But I remember having a conversation with her in the hospital and she said, Tony, I said, well, why are you crying? She started crying and I was sitting there talking to her and she said, well, because I just don't want to feel marginalized as a Black woman and they're dismissive of me. She had no reason to feel that way. Her team was amazing. Her doctor is one of the best here at Duke in that field, but it was her coming back full circle to misconceptions and misnomers and historical references and being a woman, as you know, and all these things. She felt like I'm not going to get the best standard of care because of these reasons. And so, yeah, I mean, your words are profound on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And and hopefully that's not right at all. And that she is getting, like you said, the best care. But I don't care if you have the top doctor in the world, you still have to advocate for yourself because,
Yes.
I don't know if you've heard me share this story before, but when Kicker was first diagnosed, we got through the initial induction phase. When we got out, we were inpatient, then we got to go home and were able to come in for chemo every week. So we had settled, we were maybe 30 days into treatment and I'm still going, there's got to be another way. Like, I can't imagine giving my kid chemo every day for 3.5 years. Like, there has to be another option. And I was naive enough at the time to not know any difference. So I thought, okay, well, I had a connection from an old boss that I reached out to, and he connected me to the head of CHLA, Children's Hospital Los Angeles. Connected me to the head of the oncology department. Amazing, right? So my husband and I are so excited. We make the drive to LA and we have this meeting with him. And I'm sitting there waiting, and you see on his walls pictures with all these celebrities and musicians and athletes and a million awards all around his office. And I'm like, we are getting somewhere today. Like, he's going to create a protocol that's custom for kicker. And, and I'm just so anticipatory. And all of a sudden we sit down and he's like, so what did you want to discuss today? And I said, well, my son's been diagnosed with type B acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And I'm really not happy with the option of treatment. The amount of chemotherapy they're going to give him is the same amount for a child that has diabetes and,
Wow.
all these asthma and all this. They're not changing the protocol for him. And he's outside of cancer. He's a pretty healthy kid.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that we can find a custom protocol. And he's like, kind of just looking at me. And I said, and then the other thing that I'm really frustrated about is they haven't told me what he's allowed to eat, except for he could eat whatever he wants. And I said, and I'm the nutritionist, and I know that's not true. This is where he broke. He starts laughing.
Whoa.
And he goes, oh, do not worry about nutrition. He's like, that does not matter. He can have, like they told you, whatever he wants. In fact, processed foods are better because there's less risk of infection.
He said
And
that?
I remember 100%. My husband, and I'm not aggressive. I'm only 5'1", about 120 pounds. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not confrontational. I'm not typically aggressive. But it was like my husband sensed something coming out in me. He grabbed my hand underneath the table, like, don't you reach across the desk and punch him. But I was like, I just was bubbling. I was irate because I go, okay. But he says he continues on. It doesn't matter. And it was in that moment that I realized, oh my gosh, I was heartbroken for all the families that were being told this. Like, if this is coming from the top,
from the top, yep.
This is what every family is being told. And I knew better. I knew different. And it was so defeating in that moment. But I say all of that to say that's also when that righteous anger kind of erupted in a good way. And I was like, Lord, we've got to change this. Like, we are going to change this. We have to teach other families. And so I left that office like equally defeated feeling, but equally empowered. Like, oh, get behind me, Satan. We are not going to let this be like the thing.
I can't believe he said it. Let's talk about your organization.
Yeah. So Kick Cancer. So when we were, I want to say we were about 6 months into treatment for my son. And mind you, his treatment protocol is a 3.5-year protocol. They're starting to shorten it now based on research, but at the time he went through, it was 3.5 years. So we're 6 months into treatment. And I had casually started sharing online our journey. I was blogging, I was using Instagram it was helpful. It was like a healing mechanism to journal in a way. And I started having all these parents that had found me that were reaching out and going like, my kid, that isn't this story. Like they're on hospice or they're vomiting every hour on the hour. Like, what can I do to help to have them be healthy like your son? And I just looked at my husband. I'm like, there's something more we can do. And he goes, well, why don't you just pick a weekend and we'll invite as many people who want to come out to our house and help them find a hotel nearby. And we'll just teach them everything that you're doing and that you've learned. And I was like, great. Well, I'm one to like take an idea and then go 100x.
Yep.
That's like a superpower, and also to my husband's, I'm sure, frustration.
Yeah.
So I took that and I was like, ooh, good idea. So we had a sweet friend raise about $30,000 for our family at a fundraiser about a month or two before. Yeah. And we were fortunate that we did have good insurance with my husband's job. But of course, that doesn't pay for all the natural stuff, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, we decided to take the majority of that money and host a conference, essentially, or a retreat at a hotel in LA. And we flew about 30 families in, put them up in a hotel, and brought in some of my colleagues, some of our team that was helping us naturally, some of the experts that I had gotten to know in this 6 months. And for a whole weekend, we taught these families how to help their child thrive.
Wow.
And that was the start of our nonprofit, Kick Cancer. And we just went like, we can do more. Like, we can help get this education out. And so the coolest part is like Kick Cancer, we started it during treatment, but some of our board members to this day walked through their own child's journey. And in fact, one of our board members who sends out our kits, so when a child is diagnosed or even in remission, they
Mm-hmm.
can request what we call a Kickstart kit. And it's a free kit to the family. They pay a flat rate shipping of $9.99. And it's full of organic snacks and detox supplies, a devotional, some supplements that they can take, some essential oils they can use, a superhero cape. It's just full of goodies to help their child thrive. And so we send that to families. And so the sweet woman who's a dear friend of mine that packs our kits and has from the beginning, she came to our first couple retreats, and her daughter Lainey had a really aggressive sarcoma. And unfortunately, Lainey passed in 2017? I'm trying to remember, 2016. And so she lost her battle to cancer. Yet this mom believes so much in what we're doing that she is like blood, sweat, and tears kick cancer. And she still packs our kits. She said it's a way that she can, bless other families and experience Lainey as she's packing the kits. And so it's just a beautiful movement. So we send out kits. Also, my husband had this desire about 6 years ago to incorporate our athlete program, because we would see kids, they're sitting in the hospital room, you know what that's like, and you're just like surrounded by these sterile walls, and you need something to live for. You need something to look forward to. And he's like, we need to get these kids back doing the hobby or the sport they love.
Mm-hmm.
And so we founded the Kick Cancer Athlete Program, where we scholarship kids, whether it's a little girl that wants to dance or ride a horse or do ballet, or a boy that wants to race go-karts or play soccer or football, it doesn't matter. We fund and scholarship their hobby or sport to get them back out doing that.
I love
And
that.
so we know movement is medicine, but more importantly, something they're passionate about. We want them to keep doing it as much as they can. And cancer is expensive. And so we have, we need to help these families afford to keep them in those sports. Kick Cancer's, this will be our 11th year, which is crazy. And oh my gosh, we're horrible at fundraising. That is the hardest. I don't know if you are a part of any nonprofits, but
I have a nonprofit. I was going to tell you, help you. I started my own nonprofit, the Olandus Foundation. And if I can help you in any way, let me know. I write a lot of grants for my foundation, though. And then I'm the chief diversity officer for the Patient Story. So I don't know if you heard of the Patient Story.
no.
Yeah. And so, I do a lot of that. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm sure you could give us so much advice. Because, that's the hard part. And, I would say so I'll tell you one of my favorite things, and I'm praying that God allows us to do this again. My favorite thing we did as a nonprofit was we would host retreats. So remember that first one that we started Kick Cancer with that brought all the families in? We kept doing that every year. And there were a couple years we did 2 a year. That was so beautiful, because all of a sudden you bring all these parents into a room together and they realize they're not alone.
Yep.
They have this commonality. They have people fighting for them and with them. And so they were our Kick Cancer retreats. They were the most expensive initiative that we did. But when 2020 hit, obviously we couldn't do those anymore. And so since then, our fundraising has just really suffered. But my dream is that we'll be able to get back to doing the retreats, because we heal in community.
It's
God
everything.
calls us to community. Yeah.
It does. It's everything. And I can feel the synergy. It's like the spirit knows. It knows the connections. It knows the struggles. And I think sometimes we're just insensitive to that.
Yeah.
I know it's one person we haven't talked a lot about. I want to pivot to, how's your husband doing? And how did this impact him in the beginning when all this happened?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question, because that's another thing that I advocate for. We both do, is just marriage, maintaining a healthy marriage. I feel like marriage is God's biggest weapon against the enemy. Holy Spirit filled marriages heal generations.
Yep. That's right.
And he's doing amazing. In fact, we run our private practice together here. He doesn't see clients, but he kind of does all the other stuff. And the beginning days were because female to male, the way we process emotions, right?
Yep.
He was a California Highway patrolman.
Mm-hmm.
when Kicker was sick. And so after the first 4 weeks of Kicker's treatment, he went back on the road and went back to work. And I remember he'd be gone all day. He'd come home and I would just have to process all my emotions, dump on him everything. And he wanted to come home and just everything be okay. And like everything be, just fine. And it's going to be fine. I don't really want to think about it and deal with it. And we learned this, later on, that he said to me, Season, I leave the house at 4 a.m. and I cry the entire drive to work. I'm crying
Yeah.
out to the Lord. I'm
Yeah.
crying out in anger. I am crying, all morning driving to work. And then I come home and I've let those emotions out. And he's like, so selfishly, I want things to just go forward. And I realize that you're having that moment with me when I get home, and there's this tension.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Yeah.
minute we kind of figured that out and we understood how we each needed to process was so powerful, because then what we did was we made sure that we were doing date nights every week. And that didn't mean going out to dinner every week. That was like my sister would come over, watch the kids, and we go in the backyard and have dinner, take
Yes,
out, and hang out. And we prioritized that because that gave us this connection time and allowed us to just whatever. If we wanted to talk about treatment and what was going on, sure. But if we didn't, like, we just had this time together. And to this day, it is something we take very seriously, is prioritizing dates, like regular connection points. But yeah, it's hard. And we had a scare with Kicker 2 years ago. I mean, just talking about it 2 days ago, Josh and I in the car, he got super emotional. Josh did. Talking about how horrible, and like just the thought of it coming back and all of this. And he's a pretty tough, big dude, but God has given him this gift of like just empathy and emotion. But he's amazing. And again, I don't know how, and you may have experienced this with friends, family, loved ones. The divorce rate when you walk through a diagnosis is so high.
It is. It challenges you in every way. And, I know you and your husband have this unwavering love for your child, and that alone will put stress on the love that you have for each other. And for me
Yeah.
being the one that was sick, I know it put stress on my household, And for me, I felt like, because it was like I separated a lot of things. I used my sister as a surrogate, so she would do a lot of the talking for me. And so I knew my wife and child was focused on not saying it, but wanting to see me, win. But I was
Yeah.
on the other end feeling like I had let someone down. I was de-
Mm,
I was depressed. I felt like I was a failure because I'm the strong man, right? So I'm
yeah.
like your husband, but I'm the one with the condition. And that
Mm,
was tough because I did everything, I was the rock. And now my son is here, and, I just have one child, and my wife's an educator, and the rock is sick. This strong man, I'm like your husband, just physically fit. I used to bodybuild, and I cycle, and I ran track and I did all these things. And now I am yielding to this disease that's literally trying to kill. And
yeah.
so that stresses all of your relationships, and you don't know how to process. So for me, I didn't have anybody to talk to. I talked to God because I knew if I shared how I really felt about the situation, it would change everything around me. So
Mm,
they were looking to me for strength, even in my weakness. That
mm,
was hard. And even now, because I don't look like I'm supposed to look, I still go to the hospital and the doctors are looking around like, where's the patient? That's him. You know what I mean? Him.
yeah.
And so when people look at that, they try to normalize the situation, saying he's fine, everything's okay, and I think sometimes they feel the same way. So it's kind of like this false sense of reality. But even in
Yeah.
that, I still got to be strong,
Yeah.
because if I'm not, it will bring that reality back to them that,
Mm.
hey, this is a real situation.
You know what's interesting about what you're saying? I totally agree. One thing that kind of challenged my thought process on that, on like needing to be strong,
Mm-hmm.
was this gentleman. His name is Seth Dahl. And
Mm-hmm.
I had him on my podcast a couple years ago. And we were talking about grief and processing grief. And he challenged me with something that I thought, oh my gosh, this is so powerful to understand. What he said was, the natural response is kind of what you just shared, Tony, is that we are supposed to be strong so that the people around us, whether for you, it's your wife and your son, for me, it was my son and my daughter and my husband, but specifically the people around us, if they see us break down and they see us get scared and sad, then we think they're going to freak out. He said the problem in why that's often wrong, and that's not how we should process, is because then they subconsciously feel like they have to do that as well because they don't see you being vulnerable and honest with your feelings. And so they think there's something wrong with them if they are scared or they are worried or whatever it is. And so what he was saying is obviously you can't walk around crying and cussing all day and yelling at God. But he said, you need to show them and be transparent and be okay crying in front of them, being okay telling them, I'm scared, because it actually gives them permission to now recognize that it's okay that because they do feel that way, regardless of what they're telling us, whether it's your son, a little kid, your wife, like they are scared.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you being willing to be vulnerable and sharing that you are too, it actually just gives them permission to be vulnerable and to let those emotions out rather than keep them all in. And then I think it can create healthy conversation and like opportunities to just become more vulnerable as a family together, which I struggle with vulnerability. I want to be, put together and blah, blah, blah. But I found that to be really helpful.
How did you start to incorporate that?
So one of the things we started was, we call it Happy Crappy Jesus. Okay.
Happy Crappy.
So hear me out. So
I'm
at
listening.
night, I know it sounds so horrible. I should say in a different order. So at night, and we don't do this anymore. We really should. We should get back to it. But my kids are older. It's a little harder to have these conversations. But what we would do when they were little was before we tucked them in, we'd all get together as a family. Like when it was, if we were in Selah's room, my daughter or my son's room, and everybody would come into whatever room and we'd be like, okay, and let's do our happy crappy Jesus. So we say, hey, Kicker, what are you happy about? And he'd say, what was crappy today? And he would say, where did you see Jesus today? And he would say, and we often have to start as adults, right? And some days, like, here's the thing. Some days they would be like, I would say, what was your happy? And he'd be like, did I have a window in my room? And I'm like, my gosh, come on. Like they're kids, right? Or teenagers. They're just going to be, they have their moments but it gave us opportunity to share. So when it would come to, we'd have to kind of be intentional. When it would come to crappy, I would say, Kicker, today when the doctor took you back and you had to take your nap, that he called it his nap, when they put him under anesthesia to do his lumbar puncture, I said, Mommy cried a lot. I was really scared. I hate when they take you away from me.
Yeah.
And, so then that would bring up a little bit of conversation where he would then all of a sudden, and it wouldn't happen right away in that moment. Like I always say, go into these things with like low or no expectations.
Yeah.
But the fruit will come out eventually. And so just little things like that allowed us to kind of start to peel away some of those layers, just to let them see us communicating our vulnerability and our fears and our emotions. And then it gave them a little bit of permission to do the same.
Let's talk about your cancer playbook. It seems like you do have a good playbook. When you're talking about helping people thrive through cancer, what does that actually look like in a normal, messy week for your family?
Yeah. So if I have when it's a family that is in active treatment, right? They're going to clinic multiple days a week. They've got other kids at home. I always say the thing is you have limited hours in the day, and part of your child's ability to thrive is their nervous system feeling safe. So we aren't going to we're not going to make them do things when there's this huge fight. But right when they get up, we hydrate them. And we're giving them minerals, electrolytes, clean ones right away. And usually we try, if they're not on any medications, first thing in the morning, we also try to give them some herbal remedies to support keeping the detox system functioning, some immune support, maybe some vitamin D, and breakfast. I'm like, listen, you can win the day by just getting that done and a healthy breakfast. Healthy
Mm-hmm.
breakfast could be, leftover steak from the night before you sliced up and serve with some berries or sauerkraut or something, right? So
Mm-hmm.
breakfast doesn't need to be this whole production. It can be some eggs, cheesy eggs. Kids love cheesy eggs. You got the choline, which is necessary for fighting cancer. You've got the K2 from the butter that you're cooking the eggs in, which is anti-cancer. So getting that breakfast and then getting them out the door to school. When they come home, and I'll send this to you, Tony. You can share it with your listeners. I have a kind of a start here guide. It's beneficial for adults too.
Mm-hmm.
That walks them through like a day in the life.
Yeah.
And so then we recommend parents implementing at least one remedy.
Mm-hmm.
So that remedy could be a castor oil pack, a
Yep.
detox bath,
Yep.
rebounding or a vibration plate,
Yep.
a sauna session. It could be for families that have access to hyperbaric oxygen, doing that, nebulizing to keep lungs clear, detox lungs, keep them healthy. And then we always encourage a reward. So once they've checked a therapy off the list, give them a reward. And on my website, I have there's no gatekeeping. I have so much free information. And I have a recipe for homemade gummies and homemade marshmallows
Mm-hmm.
and healthy ice cream. We call it ice cream. And so I
Yeah.
say, choose one of those to have as this is their reward for completing something that is helping them heal. And then here's a big one, like bedtime, we have a healthy dinner, hopefully. And I have so many recipes that I provide. And then they take maybe some helpful supplements away from their medication at night, maybe a detox bath before bed to get their nervous system settled. And then nighttime is so important for we know that when we sleep, we heal. And so I always encourage my families to make sure there are no electronics in their room, to unplug the Wi-Fi while at nighttime. That is so disruptive to the nervous system. And then apply a couple essential oils like lavender and frankincense down their spine and give them a little massage. Just getting all of those benefits, right? Getting their nervous system into just rest and digest.
I
And
love that.
that sleep is so important. So, and then there's families that I'm working with one-to-one out of my clinic, and they're
Mm-hmm.
on pretty regimented protocols because they're really in an active fight. They're in an aggressive treatment protocol. And so we're doing quite a bit more. So it really depends. But families are always overwhelmed in the process. And so we just meet them where they're at and give them suggestions based on what they're able to implement.
Susan, where do you stand on fasting? Where's
I
that
love
in the
fasting.
dashboard? Yeah. Let's talk
It's
about that a little bit.
amazing. So my adult clients, I do see adult oncology clients, and in active treatment, you probably have heard, you've seen the research around fasting the day before, day of, and day after chemo.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
so powerful. You can't argue with the research and how it shows it makes the chemo more effective,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps protect the rest of your body. And then you don't have all of these symptoms from the chemo. It's fascinating.
I had no symptoms from my chemo except losing my hair. That's it.
And did you do the fasting?
I fasted and I drank a bunch of
Amazing.
zeolite and stuff like that to detox. But
Yeah.
yeah, I had no chills. I didn't have the neuropathy. I didn't have the sweats. They couldn't believe it. Entire duration. Nothing.
And see, that is the story. That's every person I've worked with that implements that method. Same. It's so powerful. Doctors hate it and they're terrified because they worry about cachexia, which again, if you're listening to this and you're in the middle of a cancer fight, you do need to become metabolically flexible to be able to fast successfully without it being problematic. So I do encourage you to work with a functional practitioner,
Yeah.
that understands that, and they can help you work up to fasting. But oh my gosh, it's amazing. And my husband and I practice fasting. In fact, we usually do a few 3-day fasts a year. I haven't yet this year, so we need to do one. Now with kids, it's a little different. We don't want to force, again, it kind of comes back to that. You don't want to force kids to fast. They're just so troubled by this whole process anyways, and it's a little
That's
harder
right.
to reason with them.
It is so
Teenagers, you
difficult.
can.
Mhm.
You can, as long as you can reason with them and they can understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, then great. But what I do tell my parents is if your child wakes up and they're not hungry, don't make them eat. Yes, they need to eat in the daytime, of course, but don't force them to eat when they wake up. If they're not hungry, their body is still trying to digest and detox.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tricky, right? Because you do have to be careful because not every, if you do have a child that is malnourished because all they're eating is processed foods, it can be a little bit, their blood sugar could drop and it's just a thing. So bottom line, fasting is the most powerful gift that requires nothing, literally. But I would say just work with somebody that can help you and there's a lot of stuff online too, but just can help you become metabolically flexible to do it successfully.
Yeah, we're talking to Season Johnson, faith over fear. I can sit here and talk to you all day. This is really good stuff, and we need to do a series with you, like a 4-part series. And
I'd love that.
yeah, we need to do that, and I'm sure the radio listeners would love that. And then that's something we can create for the podcast. But I know time is drawing nigh. You got time to do a quick rapid fire? Let's lighten
Sure,
it up
go
a little
for it.
bit. All right. So first thing. One daily habit that has changed your own health the most.
Weightlifting. I like
I've seen your
kettlebells.
videos.
I'm not motivated. People always say, how do you have motivation? I just choose to do it. And I know that there are people praying, begging on their knees that God would give them the ability to do that. Yeah. So the days that I don't want to do it, I'm doing it for them.
Okay. A food you personally refuse to negotiate on in your house.
This might be controversial. Meat. I won't let my family while they're under my house. Now, keep in mind, this doesn't mean that every single human out there with every diagnosis should eat meat. But what I've learned in watching growing kids and the metabolic approach to disease and health, I'm not okay with my kids becoming a vegetarian while they're under my roof until I can trust that they're going to know how to do it well. But that's kind of controversial, right? Are we still friends?
Yeah. No, well, look, my listeners will enjoy you. They're going to say, hey, so I can eat fatback, right?
No, quality matters.
Quality
is, it's quality matters.
So Season's saying, you guys still can't eat fatback.
No,
but anyway,
that's not approved.
No fatback. That's not approved. So number 3, underrated detox practice you wish everyone would try.
That's a good question. There's so many. I wish everyone would do coffee enemas.
You know what? I haven't never done that. I've heard so much about it. Yeah.
Yeah. My husband does them now. He was so sick of hearing me tell everybody to do them over the last decade that he started doing them a few years ago. And it's the most powerful, effective way to stimulate glutathione production in your body.
No kidding.
It is a phenomenal exercise and you feel good after you do them. Nobody bothers you. It's quiet time because nobody's going to come in there when you're doing a coffee enema. They're going to leave you alone. I think it used to be in the Merck manual. So it used to be in the physician's handbook and they took it out potentially because there was no money behind it. And you're not going to make money on coffee enemas, but it is incredibly effective and helpful for detox.
I'm having flashbacks from my mom when I was a child used to give us enemas. Ooh, that's why I stayed away from that. I'll do anything else.
You're like, yeah, no.
I don't know.
Yeah, I have a bunch of information on my website about it. It's a really powerful therapy.
I'll check it out. So you're really big in essential oil. So one essential oil you'll keep, only one. You can choose one. Which one would that be?
Frankincense.
I
always say if it was good enough for Jesus, then we got to use it.
I said that same thing, man. I'm telling you, we're vibing right now because I make a lot of oils and stuff. And my wife said, why are you always using frankincense? And I said that very thing. If Jesus used it, then I'm going to use it. And I put myrrh in there too. And I don't even know what myrrh does, but I just threw the myrrh in there too.
Okay. There's actually studies. You can find this on PubMed.gov.
Yeah.
There are studies that show that if you put frankincense, sandalwood, and myrrh together in a blend and you use it, that can trigger apoptosis in cancer cells.
No way.
Yep. So again, I always say essential oils aren't going to cure your cancer, but can they play an incredibly powerful role? Oh my gosh, yes.
I have all
so add sandalwood to that.
Yeah, I'm going straight to the lab after this call and mix that up. PubMed, I used to stay on there all the time. There's just so much good information on there, but I didn't know that concoction. So you just turned me on. All right.
Awesome.
A Bible verse or quote or mantra you lean on when you feel empty.
You know, I tell my parents often that this will be redeemed. Their suffering, their story will be redeemed. God will redeem it. It won't be wasted. And I think about Moses and how he wandered in the wilderness with his staff for however many years. And God was able to use that same staff and that same man to part the waters to lead an entire nation to the promised land. And was able to redeem this man that used his staff to murder some dude and then he wandered. God redeemed that whole process and that whole story. And while it's certainly not like the same exact example of a family walking through suffering, like if he could redeem that situation, like God will redeem our suffering and none of it will be wasted.
That's right. The Bible, I love when it says, if you do these to the least of them, you do it to me. It's like sometimes God used the less and make more,
Mm,
you know?
yeah,
But sometimes in our situations like you and I in, it's bigger than us and it's for others. And as we pour out, if no one else pours into us, he will pour into us.
he will.
So as
Yeah,
you give to all these families doing podcasts and radio shows like this and encouraging people a couple thousand miles away, it's pouring back into you.
totally.
Yeah.
People will say, and they probably tell you the same thing. How do you do it? Like, I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, but every day God gives me what I need to serve his people, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ever going to be empty because of that. So you're right.
Mm-hmm. So we're coming down to the close season. Is anything you want to leave with our listeners? If you had 60 seconds and you could only tell them one thing, what would that be?
I would say, I just emphasize like that God can redeem anything. And while I pray that every client I work with, every kid I work with, every adult will be healed on earth, whether or not that's his will, he will not waste the suffering and he will absolutely redeem it. And so if you're a family right now in the hospital and you're like missing birthdays and missing holidays, like I promise you those will be redeemed. And years down the road, you will, if you let God use you, you will be able to impact others sharing just your story. And so don't let it be wasted, right? Like we also have to be willing, like you're doing after and through your journey, then you're not letting it be wasted. You're using it to share and empower others. And I think that is such a gift that we have to offer.
Call it angel work, and you're doing angel work. You're healing people with broken wings. I commend you, Season Johnson, for that. Season, where can we find you at? What's your handles?
Season Johnson on Instagram, and my website is seasonjohnson.com. Pretty easy. Our private practice is biodynamicwellness.com. And we also have an Instagram at Biodynamic Wellness. And I have so many free resources. I'll send you some that you can share with your audience. And I try to respond to messages and DMs. I do my best, but sometimes I don't get to all of them. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. And if I can encourage you in any way, I'm happy to do that.
And if you have any questions for Season, and you can reach out to me and I'll make sure she gets them. Season Johnson, Faith Over Fear. It was so good to have you on the show. I was looking forward.
Thank you. I'm so glad you asked, and thanks for having me. It means a lot.
Thank you. And until next time, not a goodbye,
Sounds good.
next time. All right. You have a great day. Take care.